This is Maarte. Not quite a podcast, more like voice memos you weren't supposed to hear. There is this quote by Stephen King. It's from his 1982 novella, The Body, and it is my most favorite. I love this quote so much. I would tattoo it on my body if I could, but nah. But I love it so much. And if there were ever a quote to not describe me, I would say speak for me, this would be it. The most important things are the hardest to say. They are the things you get ashamed of because words diminish them. Words shrink things that seemed limitless when they were in your head to no more than living size when they're brought out. But it's more than that, isn't it? The most important things lie too close to wherever your secret heart is buried, like landmarks to a treasure your enemies would love to steal away. And you may make revelations that cost you dearly only to have people look at you in a funny way, not understanding what you've said at all or why you thought it was so important that you almost cried while you were saying it. That's the worst, I think, when the secret stays locked within, not for want of a teller, but for want of an understanding ear. I mean, come on, how does that not move you? I know I sound so silly, but man, it's just my favorite. I love it so much. It hits all the notes. It's lovely. It is delicate, devastating, beautiful, just all the things all at once. You know, he writes the most important things are the hardest to say because words diminish them, and then he ends with this line, when the secret stays locked within, not for want of a teller, but for want of an understanding ear. And every single time I read that, oh God, it just gets me. Because the quote isn't about words. It's about being human. It's about the terrifying experience of carrying something enormous inside of you and realizing there may not be language big enough to hold it. Grief, for example. Have you ever tried to explain grief, like real grief, the kind that rearranges your life? You know, you end up saying something like, I miss my dad, and while that's true, it's not even close, because I miss my dad doesn't explain what it feels like to reach for your phone and remember there is nobody to call. It doesn't explain hearing a song and suddenly being 20 years old again. It doesn't explain wanting to tell them something and remembering there is nowhere left to send that message. And while the words are true, they're just too small. And that's what he means when he says words diminish things. Not because words are bad, but because some experiences are simply bigger than language. And, you know, the same thing happens with love. You can tell someone, I love you. 3 words. 3 tiny words, and somehow those 3 words are supposed to hold every late night conversation, every act of care, every sacrifice, every moment you felt seen by another human being. It's fucking impossible. And again, the words aren't wrong, they're just carrying more weight than they ever were designed to. And then there's this line, the most important things lie too close to wherever your secret heart is buried. What a freaking sentence. Because don't we all have a secret heart? A place inside of us where we keep things that matter the most. There's those dreams we don't say out loud, the fears we don't want confirmed, the grief we haven't fully touched, the love we never got to give. The version of ourselves we're terrified nobody will understand. Those things live close to the bone, and bringing them into the light feels dangerous because the moment you say something out loud, you hand it to someone else, and you let this other person judge it. They get to feel it, misunderstand it, or even worse, dismiss it. That's why vulnerability feels so physical. Your throat tightens, your heart races, your hands shake. Because your body knows. Your body knows exactly what you're risking. You're handing someone a piece of your secret heart and hoping they treat it gently. And then Stephen King says what I think is the most devastating part of the entire quote. Sometimes the secret stays locked within, not because there isn't a teller, but because there isn't an understanding ear. And that line fucking breaks my heart. Because I'm pretty sure many people walk around believing they're bad at opening up, and I don't know if that's always true. I think some people have just spent a lifetime speaking into rooms where nobody was listening in the way that they needed. And there's a difference between being heard and being understood. People hear each other all the time, but understanding each other, that's rare. An understanding ear says, I may not have lived your exact story, but I can sit with it. I can make room for it. I can honor it. I can try. Because sometimes that's all we really want. Not advice, not solutions, not somebody telling us to look on the bright side. We want someone to look at the thing we've carried in silence and say, I see why that mattered. I see why that hurt. I understand why you almost cried saying it. I mean, isn't that what we're looking for? An understanding ear, someone who speaks our emotional language, someone who can hold our stories without shrinking them. I think that's why books matter. That's why music matters. That's why movies matter. Because sometimes art becomes the understanding ear that we couldn't find in real life. Sometimes a stranger writes a sentence decades ago and somehow explains something you've never been able to put into words. You read it and think, there you are. And someone else has been here too. Someone else knows this place, and maybe that's why we keep trying. Why we keep writing, why we keep talking, why we keep telling our stories despite the risk of being misunderstood. Because every once in a while, someone hears us and says, me too. And for a moment, the thing that felt too big for words suddenly feels a little less lonely. And maybe that's the real gift of an understanding ear. It doesn't solve our pain. It doesn't change what happened. It just simply reminds us that we were never carrying it completely alone.